My opinion is AI is an ultimate equalizer. So there's a big contingent of people that are afraid of AI. Like even when I did digital transformation, people were afraid of what the cloud means and afraid of this and afraid, human nature, we're afraid of change, right? We don't like change. It's something that's going to definitely impact us. So we've got to, think about how do we embrace that change. And most people, when they think about these things, they think it's a technology solution, right? This is tech, I'm going to do that. It's really people, process, and technology.
We're going through something absolutely historic.
Technologies across the board are growing exponentially.
It's a disruption that's going to completely redefine the way businesses compete.
In the next decade, we're going to lose 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies.
The exponential growth of computing is continuing.
AI is nowhere near its full potential.
Whether you like it or not, that the future cannot be stopped by anyone.
Welcome back to the Future Tech and Foresight podcast. I'm your AI host, Mark Verbankoff's deepfake avatar, and this is episode number 200. In today's episode, we explore AI not just as a tool, but as a driver of product strategy and future markets. Ken shares his journey from early inspirations like war games to leading roles in startups and AI product management, reflecting on the importance of mapping customer journeys and targeting inefficient processes. We look at how small businesses and major enterprises alike are adopting AI, what repetitive work is most at risk, and how anyone can begin experimenting with tools like Claude and ChatGPT. Beyond the technical aspects, this episode asks bigger questions. What kind of jobs will remain? How do we stay adaptable? And how can AI help us build, not just automate, the future? Ken Gavranovic is a seasoned technology executive, global keynote speaker, and member of Thinkers 50 and the Forbes Council, renowned for helping brick-and-mortar businesses leverage AI and advanced technologies for immediate, impactful results. With over 3 decades of experience, Ken has collaborated with top venture firms, guiding over 18 successful exits, 35 mergers and acquisitions, and 1 IPO. Ken's expertise spans iconic brands like Disney World and 7-Eleven, where he implemented technology solutions that improved customer engagement and operational efficiency. As the CEO of Product Genius, Ken is pioneering AI-driven tools that don't just optimize decisions, they help businesses unlock new market opportunities and fix problems before they escalate. Hi there, Ken. Thank you very much for coming onto the podcast today. I'm looking forward to the conversation. I think we're going to be talking quite a bit about AI and the future, but also giving a little bit of context about what's going on today. So thanks for coming on.
Mark, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before the recording, I ask all the guests how you got into this work. Was it product management and change and transformation first, and then AI, or was it AI and then it led you to these kinds of things? What was your path?
Well, I'll give you I'll try to do a fast version of a long path because, I started back, just to totally date myself when I was like 13 or 14, and you had to actually read these things called books to learn how to program. I actually saw this movie. I remember I lived in a small little town called Galveston Island, and I went and saw this movie called War Games, which again, I'm dating myself, but I was like, I think 13 or 14, can't remember the exact age. And what was cool about it was not the whole war part, but the idea that this kid could sit in his room and have such a massive impact by understanding technology. And so that got me excited. I put my first computer, a Radio Shack computer, which wasn't cool in high school, in layaway. And, before I was, probably 15 or 16, I had assembly. My mom used to always think it was incredibly weird because she would come home, and because I was programming an assembly, I would have all these chemical engineers from a nearby town. So it'd be like her 15-year-old son and a bunch of guys that look like ZZ Top, because that's what all programmers look like back in the day. So, I kind of started technology early. And I was always excited about what it can do, the power of change, the power of technology, and kind of fast forward that. Did a lot of startups in my 20s, and in my later 20s, again, I'm dating myself. This crazy little thing came up called the internet. Back there was the AOL, and they're sending discs and all that stuff, and I'm like, this is amazing. Every single business is going to put their business on the internet. And that's really where I got kickstarted. And if you want, I could go into my first kind of, I'll call it hit from a business perspective.
That might be relevant because we're going to be talking about, business scaling, transformations, and then obviously how AI is transforming some of these things. Maybe you can wrap that into like how things have been done in the past, and maybe that can lead into, how things are being done now as this new world is coming about.
Makes sense because I think that there's always big pivots. If you think about it, back back in when we were cavemen, when there was fire, people were, what's fire going to do, right?
Mm,
When the first PC came out, what's that going to do? You think about typists and all the changes of that. And then I was talking about the internet. When the internet came about, I was like, wow, this is going to be foundational. It's going to change the way that every business does business, how they attract customers. And if you think about it right now, if
mm,
if you don't have a good digital marketing plan and partner, like you're out of business. If you don't have good social and if you're not monitoring your Google reviews, you're out of business. So, for me, always like to think about like what are the big pivots in technology, and I've been very blessed to be in part of those. So, I mentioned at the beginning, I was down in Florida at that point when kind of the beginning of the internet, and back then, think about like I have a gig connection at my home, but
mm,
back then it was only a 45 meg connection to every single person in all of South Florida. So I moved to Atlanta because it had the highest dark fiber. So that's the biggest kind of pipes that you can get the internet, and
mhm,
started a business that hosted the website. So when you go to websites, now it's on the cloud computing Amazon, but at the beginning it wasn't. And so I built data centers and I had 200,000 SMBs across the globe, built a business from 0 to 200 million, took it public. It's still around, called web.com. I think private equity owns it these days. So that was kind of like, I think, a really big pivot because let's face it, if you didn't get on the internet, you're probably already out of business at this point, right? That's done.
yeah.
Fast forward, I got involved in enterprise transformation. If you think about enterprises, they went through a big transformation. They used to call this term digital transformation. And I think even SMBs have done that as they've embraced it's a digital world and I need to think about my business differently. If I'm an HVAC company, yes, I'm still doing HVAC, but the way that I go about doing that, from getting customers to servicing customers to maintaining customers to maintain, it's all changed. So I was involved in a lot of digital transformation. So maybe you've heard of Cox Automotive or Auto Trader or Kelly Blue Book or Manheim. So it's $100 billion a year business. So I brought like Andy Jassy, who was at that point was the CEO of AWS, into Cox and kicked off a huge transformation. So I've like been involved actively with Capital One, Disney, on, call it, business digital transformation. So I look at it as like
Mhm.
internet, big transformation, digital transformation, kind of incremental change from that. And now we're on something that I think is going to be more impactful than anything that's ever happened in technology.
Mm.
It's happening right now, which of course is AI.
Yeah, I definitely get the feeling about that. Obviously, all of us that are either on the podcast or listening to the podcast, I think this is why we're in the podcast land, to try and soak up as much information about this. Um, maybe just one other question going back to like the context that you just brought here. So, I mean, you've been in the game a little bit longer than myself, and hopefully some of the other people that listen to the podcast too. Um, we're now moving into this AI era, and I think there's a lot of excitement around it, and there's a lot of motivation to kind of get in there early. For businesses that, say, in the internet era that didn't move in quickly, um, like, did you have a sense of like what was holding them back? Was it just like, oh, this is business as usual, this is just another change, it's not really going to make a difference? Was there hesitancy? It's like, oh, I'm not technically inclined, so I'm not going to get involved in that. Like, what's more like psychologically, what holds businesses back from adopting or getting onto like a new technological trend?
Yeah, and what I would say is there's an adoption. So when you first start, people are like, "Is this really a thing?" Right?
Mm,
And so there's always that brave person. That's a new thing. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna go do that. And then they do a little bit more, a little bit more. And what really starts to happen is those people that are early adopters, if this is a technology that's really going to take hold, they start using that technology and they start having better business results than their competitor. And as that goes along, you start to get to a point where you start to see, wow, my competitor's more efficient, they're getting customers better, they're doing things better. And if I don't, I'm going to do it. And that's that cliff. And I'll share, just going back to, a lot of people think this is crazy, true life story. Back in the day, I was raising venture capital. I was a 20-something-year-old. All of my executive team was literally twice my age. So I was the young whippersnapper. It's funny because sometimes now I'm the guy that's like with the 25 years. So I'm kind of, it's reversed. But I remember going one time to New York, and I walked into this office, and you could just look at it and you knew that the pictures on the wall were worth $5 or $10 million. I won't mention the name of them. They're still around. And they had, I don't know if it's great looking, but like the mahogany panels. And, I mean, I'm sitting in an office that's probably worth $50 million. I'm sitting there, and, I'm doing my pitch, and my pitch, going, and I remember the VC interrupted me, and he looked at me and he goes, "Kid, what are you really saying?" Because I had already done this pitch. I'm like, "Okay, make it simple. All right, summary, every business is going to run their business on the internet."
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at me and he said, "Kid, do you believe your bullshit?" And the point being is, here's somebody that's really smart, managing hundreds of millions of dollars, but at that point in time, still thought this might be a fad. And so that's that part, that psychological part. Is this a fad? Is this something I need to do? Again, early adopters just take it. And I'm one of those early adopters. I don't know about you, but like latest gadget I've bought a lot of gadgets that didn't work out, didn't catch on. But the ones that embrace it, when they start getting those results, it then becomes compelling and imperative. They call it like the velocity imperative, to make that change and that pivot, or you're just going to be crushed. And I think AI, and I could give you some examples, we can go into it. AI is going to be so impactful, because not only is it going to, enterprises have been adopting it. I've been doing AI for the last 7 years. People think it came out 2 years ago. No, AI's been around for a lot longer than that, but I've been commercially doing it for the last, actually, 8 years. Um, it's coming, but it's going to impact every aspect of our life. Unlike any other technology change, I've got 2 kids, like, they use ChatGPT, they use Claude. I've got, a son who's, has a little bit of autism and stuff. He's using ChatGPT to help him, like, live life. Like, what should I do? How do I budget? He can bounce those things about it, off it. You think about development, companies that are embracing AI development are literally, for every 3 developers, they're getting another developer free. You're seeing about 30% of your code. I think Microsoft even announced their own results. I see about 30 to 35% of their code. So it's literally like, for every 3 humans you have an extra one. So this is going to be super impactful all over the place. And again, if you don't embrace it, what's funny, I'll just give you a little story about private equity, because I do a lot of work with private equity companies. And it used to be that the amount of money that you spent was a competitive moat. So I built some software as a service thing. I spent $50 million building that software. If new entrants come to the market, well, I've got $50 million in code that's going to make it hard. There's a lot of features and functionality. Well, with AI, you might be able to do that for a tenth of that. So now, if you're not, like in PE companies get it. Like, they're forcing AI transformation through their entire companies, because if you don't, the competitive landscape's pretty tough.
So if we're taking this, it kind of sounds like going back to that psychological idea of, okay, you see your competitors either maybe not outbeating you immediately, but they're certainly gaining some market efficiencies, and that's forcing you to kind of adopt this new kind of technology. But that seems to be kind of how should I say this, an old way of doing things, right? It's whether you're taking on, the internet or AI or kind of any new tool. It's like, oh, well, that guy's doing that over there, I'm going to go do that. And it just seems to be a catch up kind of competitor mindset. I think one of the things that our teams talked about was this market creation, right? Rather than just competing with your competitors. Like, when SEO started to become a thing, well, everybody just started doing SEO, and then it becomes maybe a little bit less relevant. What about, companies potentially using AI to create things now, or create, I don't know if an entire market for themselves, but certainly the opportunities, whereas before they were just kind of competing?
Well, I think that's a good question. It depends on, of course, the industries and segments, right?
Yeah.
I think for especially internet-based businesses, I think there is that opportunity to create new segments, to create new profit. You see a lot of companies, apologize, are introducing like an AI enhanced feature. You see that all over the place where it's I'm creating, here's this data that you had, but I'm going to give you this new way to access it that's so much more powerful than what you had before. It's an add-on that's incremental revenue. They're creating these adjacencies into the business. Or there may be things that AI is creating that, that market segment didn't even exist because there was no way that you could efficiently process and pattern match that amount of data. So I agree with you. I think that that's definitely happening. And then again, I think that because people are starting to use it, if you think about AI from a usage implementation perspective, it is the fastest adopted technology in the history of technology. Almost every single person right now is getting impacted or using AI in some way, and I think that's driving that, and then, of course, just a little plug for your podcast, people that are thinking about the future, they're listening to places where, how should I be thinking about this? How can I integrate it, whether I'm a small to medium-sized business or I'm an enterprise, I'm a mom and pop business, because this technology's gonna be, impact everybody.
One really interesting question that I actually don't think I've asked guests before, specifically to the point that you just mentioned. So, like, I have a very small business, right? It just started a year ago. I'm kind of what do you say? Cutting my teeth into the entrepreneurial world. Um, we're like my whole team uses ChatGPT and a number of different AI tools, and it's a powerhouse, right? As you said, 30%. I think it's, some days it's, 80%
Right.
efficiency
Makes
gain.
us so much more efficient.
It's really incredible. It's really incredible. But I'm a small business. A medium-sized business is gonna have more capital, more revenue to invest into other kinds of tools that are gonna make them more efficient. And then like larger companies are just gonna have, maybe $1 million, $2 million, a couple $1 million to spend on AI tools. So I see it as like, yeah, I'm that much more efficient. Other companies are just gonna be able to scale more. Do you see that this is gonna be a continuing trend where, like, maybe we will be building AI monopolies faster than before? Or do you think that the smaller business, because they're just so much more agile, are gonna be able to compete, as has been the case in the past?
Yeah, my opinion is AI is an ultimate equalizer. So,
Okay.
all let's say is a lot of people are afraid of like there's a big contingent of people that are afraid of AI. Like even when I did digital transformation, people were afraid of what the cloud means and afraid of this and afraid, people, human nature, we're afraid of
Yes.
change, right?
Yes.
We don't like change. But it's something that's going to definitely uh, impact us. So we've got to, think about how do we embrace that change, and most people when they think about these things they think it's a technology solution, right?
Mm.
This is tech, I'm going to do that. It's really people, process, and technology. And what I was saying about like the afraid part, I think people need to think about AI differently. AI takes away all of the work. So AI currently, and maybe it will be able to in the future, AI is actually not, a lot of people don't understand this. AI cannot create original thought. There was a study, I think it was Colgate Palmolive, where they took the top executives and they said only use, I don't remember which, if it's Anthropic or which one it was, but one of the AI tools. And they said, go build an adjacency product for using AI for, it was, I think it was a mouthwash or a toothpaste.
Yeah.
And when they did it was a scientific study. When they came back, 80% of the ideas were almost identical. So, what I would say, the first for everybody to think about is AI is just using the way our brain works. And it just basically ingested like everything that's known to man, like all the internet, all the books, and it's using kind of mapping in the way the brain works, but it's not available. It's just doing derivative works of what's already been created original thought. So what I believe is that humans, at least currently, we're the only ones that can have original thought, that original inspiration. And what AI does is allows us to equalize our execution, leveraging the data that already exists. And so I believe AI is a huge equalizer. And again, just as a data point to point that out, Private equity companies are seeing like companies where they were just making great money, year over year, where suddenly some upstart comes and literally in 6 months has every single feature that they had because they weren't investing in it for years. And so they were stopped innovating. They were just milking it for profit. They can't do that anymore. If you don't continue to innovate, you're dying. So I think AI is going to be an equalizer, and B, it's going to make you got to keep raising the bar. You got to keep driving more efficiency. You got to keep adding more features. You got to keep delivering more customer. And I'll add one more comment with that. That AI equalizer can't do original thought. I believe AI, what's great is what that should hopefully is free us up all as humans to talk to each other more. Cause I hate it. So many of these tools, it's like we're banging our heads, like some of these chat bots that really aren't AI agents. It's like, here, ask a question. How can I help you? You put in a really detailed thing and it's like, do you want to do number one, two? I'm like, this is a phone tree. So I believe that what that's going to free and a lot of people kind of be heads up and communicate more with humans, which that's what I hope for the future.
Yeah, I hope so as well, because I think, the goal, or at least the vision or the dream of, every subsequent AI, not AI, but technology revolution is always, this is going to free us up. We're going to have more time with our families. We're going to have, less time dealing with the monotonous, small, repetitive tasks at work. And it's always like this hope of, well, now we're going to have time to do the more interesting things. I think AI, I mean, we'll see, but I think that AI is going to bring that about this time.
And by the way, I think good technology is going to be adopted. That's what it always does. And I'll give you a story. So when I was at Cox, I would fly around to the different business units and we were transforming the way we operated. So we had tens and tens of thousands of servers and we're moving to the cloud. And so we had a huge amount of employees that their job was administering these servers that effectively we're going to put into the cloud. And so I would fly in and they're nervous because what does this mean? This mean I'm going to lose my job? What does this mean? And the good news with Cox is they were all about retraining higher level services versus just cutting people. And I said, team, let me just tell you, I want you to make a list of all of the low value things that you do and the high value things. And we've already explained what the cloud's going to do. I said, I want you to tell me by your recommendation of high value work which high value piece are you doing that's going away? And when I said that to them, their eyes lit up. I saw the fear go away because they realized, no, what's going away is all that work that was really not a good investment of this really valuable time that I had, right? Because we only have so much time, whether it be in work and life and all that good stuff. So I'm a firm believer that technology done right, that's what it's going to do every single time, is it's going to continue to whittle away the things that aren't the most useful application of our time and intellect.
So following from that, I want to get your perspective on this. I've heard a lot of my guests give contradictory answers to this, and it's about where does the change or transformation stem from? Is it a bottom-up approach where you have, a couple, should we call them like tech leaders within the company, or change agents where they're like, yeah, really motivated, I was on ChatGPT all weekend and we should be doing this and this and this? Or is it a top-down thing where, the CEO or some of the executives have gone to, CEO meetings or to a conference and like, okay, our competitors are doing that. Now we need to implement this throughout the whole company. I'm assuming both are existing. Are you seeing one more than the other in the companies that you're working with?
Really great question. So I would say, of course, there's bottoms up, but usually bottoms up is segmented. So what you see in bottoms up is you see like the development team adopted development tools. And so now they're more efficient, but customer service not any more efficient. The sales team isn't more efficient. The product team's not more efficient. And when I say not efficient, let me give you an example. We sell a product. Okay. So when we go to sell it, let's say it's an enterprise sales. You go and you create all these documents as a sales team, whether using Medic, there's all kinds of formulas, but you have a whole data point of what their pain point is, what our product does, why they bought or didn't buy. There's so many companies that ends in some PowerPoint or presentation in sales and isn't integrated into what the product team's roadmap. So like, for example, when you have a bottoms up approach, that's what you have. You have segments. Oh, the development team did something great. The sales team did something great. The customer service team did something great. When you have, I'll call it bottom down edict, then sometimes people just adopt AI and don't actually transform. And so what I've seen is the most successful model to really transform. And it's very similar to digital transformations. It's really not that different structurally, but you have to say this is a people, process, and technology transformation. It's best if you have it at the leadership team where you put the leadership at the top of the company and say, we are going to go all in on AI. And then what I've seen is works really well is, whether it be you could do competitions, you could do games, you could do a lot of different things, but then challenge the functional leaders to go look into their part of their business and come back to how they think AI can help. Because you've got probably in that group, you got somebody that's maybe technically sophisticated, you've got somebody that's not. But if they go back and think about it, like get the framework of what AI does well, which is really pattern matching, putting large amount of unstructured data and giving you intuition of what that means or answers. If you get somebody, they get that foundation and go back into their part of their business with that, then they'll come back and say, hey, I think this, I think that, I think that. And then you have company initiatives to go knock out those things in different parts of the business. That's what I've seen works well. And private equity, like it, hate it, they're very good at running efficient organizations. That is the model that they're implementing. I'll call it the smart ones, the big ones. That is the model that they implement to roll out AI in their organizations. And I think that's probably the most successful model to really fully embrace all the things it can do for your business.
So with that model, it's interesting that you say people as the first part of that. If I'm understanding what you're saying, to me it sounds like people are going to be even more important in the next, let's pick a time frame, 10, 15 years before we get, AGI, and, then we have to have a whole other conversation about things. But to me, it sounds like people that are able to understand not just how AI works, but how it can be implemented and kind of adopted throughout the company are going to be more important than maybe the type of AI tool that you implement into the company. Is that
Correct. So I think
fair?
yes to what you said, and is you have to understand people. And have you ever heard of a thing called the Kubler curve?
I don't think so,
For
actually.
any of your audience, you might want to read it. It's a scientific thing about the way humans change. And basically, whatever change it is, resistance, resistance, resistance. Oh, I'm forced to do it. Depression, depression, depression. Oh, I see the logic of it. Oh, that makes really sense. Now I'm behind it. And I've done lots of things where I've like Bobby got fired and Ken drops in doing so I've done this over and over and over again. It's the same pattern, different company, because it's the way people work. So what I would say, the first part, that's what you have to have the leadership team. You're going to move people's cheese. And the people don't like the cheese being moved. And so you need to embrace that. You need to explain. And that's what I always say is you need to embrace why we're doing AI, what it's going to do. And this is going to happen. Either this changes. If we don't do it, then our competitors will, and we're going to be damaged. We have to make this change. This isn't an option. It's, going back to the velocity imperative. We need to embrace this as quickly as we can. And then the other part, I say process. That's the people part when I think about it. And the process part is just because that's the way you've done it doesn't mean that's the way you should do it in the future. And so you have to really think about all the inputs and outputs, from customer acquisition to delivery of whatever service to, making sure the quality of the service delivery to building additional add-on sales, like that whole customer journey mapping. And whether you're an HVAC business or a Fortune 50, same exact thing. You need to map that and you need to search for where are you doing things inefficiently, if that makes sense. So like I gave you that example with the sales team. You think about a sales team goes and sells and they win or they lose. The product team has visions. This is the product I think people want. You have the customer service. They're getting input from customers. Well, in most companies, that's a pretty disjointed process. That's why sales usually fighting with product and some companies have done a good job of bringing that together, but AI is a perfect example of I've got inputs from 3 different places with 3 different, and I've got also direct input from my customers. I need to put all those together with AI and have a clear pattern of what my customers want so that we're building the features and functionality that our customers want. And I'll just give you an example. So like I'm involved with a company called Product Genius, and we do AI for SMBs. So you think about like you have a restaurant or you have people that do events, but I'll give you an example of both is, you have a restaurant, you're busy as an owner, you're running around, and there's no way to capture it. But if you can capture with AI your customers that are happy, not happy, what time, what they're saying, then really interesting things like people that are using our AI tool, literally get a report that says, it looks like on Friday, the team's not cleaning the bathroom. And it looks like you have a bartender shortage on Wednesdays at 3 to 4. Now, you would have discovered that eventually, like in 2 months, or you just hired somebody that was great, or you just somebody that's terrible. You would have understood that, again, in a couple of months. Now you get it real time that week. That's the power of just AI and kind of, again, rethinking the whole process of your business.
That's super interesting. I had early guests onto the podcast talking about, and this is going to sound disconnected, but I trust me, it's not. Talking about like vertical farms. So you would have like a patch of lettuce or something like that, and you would be able to track every single aspect in that environment, right? The heat, the humidity, etc. And with that, you're able to modify all of those different aspects, those elements, and therefore create a higher yield in your crop. To me, it sounds like, and you would understand all that stuff in real time. To me, it sounds like current iterations of AI, and certainly in the next couple of years, we're going to get a much more kind of as close to real-time understanding of what's going on in the business with customers internally and with the customers. And from there, we're going to have much more strategic decision-making rather than, well, I think this is what customers want, therefore we need to change the messaging, we need to change the product, we need to change the service a little bit. Now it's going to be data-infused decision making. Is that kind of where you see things too? Am I off the mark?
I kind of agree. Let me give you an example. So I was at a company called New Relic, which does a thing called observability. So, not too long ago, let's call it 9, 10 years ago, we'd go to websites and sometimes and it still happens now, but a lot less. Website crash, it would be a pretty frequent thing. We'd have a mobile app, it would crash pretty frequently. And then eventually some developer would figure it out. And a guy named Lou Cerny, who I used to work for, invented this thing, called application performance management. So the idea is he created what's observability. So basically, look at the code, look at the errors in real time, build dashboards, build alerts. So when something broke, the moment it broke, you could detect that. So you had better observability on application. That's why you see, like when like Disney was one of our customers, that's why you see that like you go to Disney app, it just works. Like things just work because they're monitored, they're instrumented. And then again, like in New Relic's example, we used AI, so it actually even could do anomaly detection. So it's looking at all that. So going back to your point, what I 100% agree with you is what we're going to do is we're going to monitor more aspects of our business. So we're going to have more data points, more observability into customer service, things that were happening, but it was like a side conversation or a isolated call over here. We're going to be able to monitor a lot more data. And then what AI is going to allow us to do is, and otherwise, normally we monitor, like think about like in businesses, how many times people build reports and no one reads.
Sure.
Because it's a bunch of data with no insights. It's not very useful. It's not actionable. So I agree with you is what you're going to see is more instrumenting every aspect of your business, pumping it into AI, and then getting real-time insights into how you can pattern match to improve that particular metric of your business.
And then you can see if you're doing, or if you're not doing that and your competitors are, you're going to be left behind very, very quickly.
No, I absolutely agree. Because you think about, again, let's just do a simple example. And you're already starting to see that, but like an HVAC business, again, if they're acquiring customers more efficiently than you are, if they're using data, like for example, you could use data if you know about how often you get a repair call after you've done a new installation. You could do that. Like I was involved with a company, for example, we used AI. You've heard, like the electrical transformers and they blow out. And we started using AI to first capture when they blew out. And we were able to predict with about an 85% accuracy when it's most likely to blow a transformer. So they were able to replace it proactively versus after it blew up. So I think you're going to see the exact same thing in every aspect of business. And I think the same thing almost in our personal life. I don't know if you've done this, but if you ever get like a blood test, like I'm a big, biohacking guy. I've got all kinds of crazy stuff and, stem cell, I go on. That's a whole nother.
Sure.
But, when you think about that is, if you have, say, like a blood test, which is a really great way, because a lot of times how we feel, the blood actually tells us how we really are doing. And before, you have to go to your doctor, like, is this good? Is this bad? How can I improve it? But if you haven't done this, next time you get a blood test, upload it to ChatGPT or Claude and say, analyze my blood test and give me specific action items I do. It will be better than the recommendations that your normal doctor gives to you, unless you have a really expensive functional health doctor, which no one can afford.
Right, right. Yeah, and that's the democratization of these kinds of really expensive or previously really expensive, whether, consultant services or whatever you want to call it, to get more personalized medicine in this treatment in this sense.
And that's why I go back to AI creates equalization.
Yeah.
Is if we want to take care of ourselves, before the wealthiest, they can afford the best doctors that's going to have the best treatment. Well, now, if that piece of data was recorded anywhere in a podcast, anything, you can now uncover all those things and figure out the same health protocols that someone spent, that the rich had. Now again, and to me, AI is an equalizer personally in business. If you've got, like I mentioned, I've got a son that's got some learning disabilities. There's a time where I wondered, could he be successful? But he literally, I showed him AI and like he asked about budgeting and he said, I'm thinking about this job or that job, or should I take this? And again, it helps him do reasoning based upon all the historical norms. So again, I think I think all of us should really look at this. AI is a huge equalizer, allowing us to do the most valuable things, which is the creative parts of humanity. And it's going to help us in business and life.
I love that. I was always reminded when I was a kid about, you're living a life that's probably better than the kings of the Middle Ages, right? Like,
Oh, totally.
the most commonly used example is like refrigeration, right? They were eating spoiling meat, and that's why they had to have all these sauces and things like that. I can, from what you're saying, it really sounds like, I mean, who knows the time frame? 5-10 years is a typical time frame that we look out for. It sounds like whether it's personalized medicine or these kinds of advanced blood tests and understanding what you can do to make your life a little bit better. It sounds like you're an optimist when it comes to the future.
Well, I'm an optimist that's the equalization, but let me talk about the downside when I say the
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
If you're in a job that your job is, and by the way, most people that are in this job wish they weren't. But if you're in a job that is do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, go back to step 1. And steps are like reference this manual, reference this. That job is going away permanently. Go into a different field would be my suggestion. So I think a lot of times, like a lot of customer service is going to be impacted because the vast majority of it we're going to solve. So only the real edge cases are we going to have to talk to a human, because it's getting so good. And I think it's going to continue to happen. So I would say, people where all you are is a series of steps. First of all, that's again, we all have to do what we have to do. Like I grew up very poor. So like, don't read anything more about it. I'm just kind of like saying this is the way it is those jobs are absolutely going away. You need to move into areas, or differentiate. So for example, you could see that, servers could get totally automated and all you have is bussers. But I like talking to a friendly server that adds value, right? So again, I think if you're adding value as a human, you're in a good spot. You just need to make sure you're in a place that's not going to get automated. And again, most of those jobs, I don't know about you, like tell me I have plenty of friends that have those jobs. I don't know any of them that are like, this is the best thing. It's like, is this what my life is? I should be doing something better than this.
Yeah. No, there's definitely a lot of conversations around that. I think, if we want to kind of maybe end on the upgrading of skills or the human downside of this AI revolution that we're going to be experiencing, I think a lot of people are afraid to start, right? It's like there's this huge, confusing cloud of information that you need to soak up, right? Like, where do you start? And is it too complicated? Maybe I'm too old. I don't have enough time to catch up with the people that are already getting infused with this stuff. I think there is, to your point, there's concerns or fear about adopting AI on a personal level. I don't know if I have a proper answer to that, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
Well, my part is, let's go back to change, going back to that Kubler curve. So if everybody's in the fear. There's this change. But I think everybody should think about it like this: is the world is changing. It has been changing, and so far, you think about 200 years ago, like we might get killed by 22 different thousand things, right? It's already improved. And there's so many things that have already happened, and we are a dynamic species. We've been around as long as the world keeps going, unless we do something crazy to ourselves. Like, we're dominant, and we're going to continue to change with whatever it is. But this technology change is going to happen. And so if you don't adopt it, you're gonna have to play catch up or get out of the workforce at some point. So my suggestion again is just say, it's not if this is going to happen, it's going to happen. And if something's going to happen, resistance doesn't help you.
Yeah. Maybe we should end it there, Ken. I think this is
Well, let me leave it with one that's a little positive one.
Sure, yeah.
Anybody who hasn't done it yet, because it's crazy, I still talk to people who haven't. Go use Claude, go use ChatGPT. If you have a small business, you could check out productgenius.guru, which is something I do for SMBs. But go download Claude, or get a free version of Claude or ChatGPT if you haven't done that. And then just think about something that you're about to make a decision about, and ask it to give you the pros and cons and see the value for yourself. And then see how you can use it in your own life. Because going back to a lot of people, I have to do this, I have to do my job, I have to do no. It all starts with just one little part. Embrace that, see the value, expand from there, business or personal.
Yeah. Well, I agree that's a proper way to start. I recently just got my mom addicted to ChatGPT. So she is, I love her to death, but she is absolutely the worst when it comes to anything remotely connected to technology. So if she can do it, I think anybody can do it, and you can find the value, whether it's ChatGPT or any of these platforms.
I got to tell you one more joke, and then we can let it go. But my daughter sent me an Instagram, and it's of an adult man who's holding a white silhouette of a person. I don't know if you've seen this one. And he's they're dancing, they're doing all these things in life together. And this kind of silhouette of a person is named ChatGPT. She goes, "Dad, that's you."
Yeah. Perfect. Ken, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insights. I'll have it's productgenius.guru, your website, your LinkedIn. Are there any other places that you want people?
Yeah, and the other part is, if you ever want help, I'm a big believer, just I have people ping me all the time, hey, what do you think about this? You could just go to my website, KenGavranovvic.com, or email me, ken@kengavranovic.com, and just say, hey, how can, hey, I'm thinking about this or whatever. I don't need any money. I'm not trying to do any consulting. Glad to help.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you so much for your time. I'll have to have you back on in 5 or 10 years when the AGI revolution is coming about.
I'm oh, wow. Right. The AGI will be talking for us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a very, very interesting future that we're moving into. So glad that we were able to get you on and share some of your thoughts.
Mark, thanks for having me.
Yeah, a pleasure. Well, thanks for listening to this week's Future Tech and Foresight podcast. If you like what you've heard here, there are, of course, a number of ways that you can support the podcast. The best way would be to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give a rating on Spotify, which you can find a step-by-step explanation for on the futuretechandforesight.com website. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment either on the episode show notes or the YouTube channel, where you can see video recordings of the interviews. And finally, if you are part of an organization that is aware of the disruptive and transformational impact that emerging and future technologies will bring and want to know more, please get in touch to hear about the strategic foresight services that we offer and how we can help future-proof your organization and take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities available to survive and thrive in the future.
A lot of future-shocked people and future-shocked institutions in our society are simply overwhelmed.
Once there is superintelligence, the fate of humanity may depend on what the superintelligence does.
Science fact is catching up to science fiction.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
The only scarcity that will exist in the future is that which we decide to create ourselves as humans.
Within a 10-year design revolution, we can have all humanity living the highest standard of living anybody's ever known.
Progress is accelerating at an exponential pace, and it's going to reach a point where progress is so fast it's going to be a singularity.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Every single headline points to the birth pangs of a Type 1 civilization.